Welcome to Kelly Minds Her Manners, a podcast about real estate and entrepreneurship with a twist. Here's your host, Kelly Robinson.
Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Kelly Minds Her Manners. Today, I have the inspiring Aneta Kuzma, who is the CEO and founder of Ardelian Kuzma Group. She's an author. She's a podcaster. She has over 25 years experience in executive banking, where she was very successful, and she made a career switch. She now coaches and consults highly achieving professionals and entrepreneurs, but she does so in a different way, which I absolutely love. She focuses on mindful leadership, an increase in focus, creativity, and productivity. And she also delivers wellness programs to large organizations, helping teams achieve optimal health, which all leads back to more success. And does success necessarily mean wealth? Does it mean fancy things, or does it mean something else? We'll see what she has to say about that, and what she has to say about my Fearless 5 questions at the end. She has some great answers, and I can't wait for you to hear them. Her book, Live the Width of Your Life, 365 Daily Meditations on Living with Purpose, Passion, and Peace, is available on her website and on Amazon. And you can also listen to her podcast, Live the Width of Your Life. We'll put all of that in the show notes. Please welcome Aneta Kuzma. Welcome, Aneta. I am so excited to have you on the show today. I think you're super inspiring. I love your podcast. I was looking at your book today, and I'm going to get a copy because one of my New Year's resolutions, I guess over 6 months ago now, was to meditate. So maybe you can teach me a little bit about that today, because I haven't started. But I'm really excited to have you today. And I like to start from the beginning. So tell me where you grew up and what childhood was like, and if there's anything from your childhood that may have foreshadowed what you're doing now.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you, Kelly. I'm so excited to be here. And I will send you a signed copy of the book. So so I will make sure you get a copy. Yeah, my childhood was interesting. So I was born in what used to be the country of Yugoslavia, which doesn't exist anymore, and immigrated with my parents right before kindergarten. And so I was very young. I didn't speak any English when I started school. So I was definitely in the ESL classes for a bit. And so I'd say early childhood, before we moved here, I think I was really free, carefree, and enjoyed life and childhood. And then early on here, I would say it was just trying to figure out a way to figure out how to be American, how to fit in, how to learn the language. So it was a lot of catch up. And so while for some kids, maybe kindergarten is just learning more of the things that the parents already started doing, for me, I felt like I was starting at square one in many ways. And so it's interesting. I think that going to your question about, is there anything in childhood that maybe impacted what I'm doing today? A couple of things that maybe I hadn't always thought about is when you don't speak a language and when you are in those environments, you learn observation skills. And I think you learn to pick up on body language and pick up on cues. And also, I think I became extremely empathetic and compassionate towards others. And so as a coach, I think that all of those skills, the listening, the connection, reading between the lines, all of that is really important. And when I finally was able to master the English language and start talking, then I remember all my report cards were great grades, straight A's, but the comments were always like, she talks too much. And I think I felt like I was catching up. And so maybe that ties into podcast interviews. And I do think spending so much time working so hard reading, trying to get my reading skills up, maybe an avid reader and a writer, two things that I really love. So maybe all of that happened in those really young formative years. Yeah. Thanks for asking the question. I really hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah, I always find it really interesting how things kind of come back full circle. You went to college, you got a bachelor's degree, then you got your master's degree, right?
I did. Yep.
And then you went into finance.
Yes. Yeah. So it's really interesting. I loved learning. And so I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I graduated undergrad. I was very much a liberal arts major. I majored in English literature, French and women's studies. I just loved school. I really did. And when I graduated, I actually worked at Berlitz Language Center in New York. And I loved that was a combination of sales and culture and language. And it just really fit me. And when we moved from New York to Cleveland, where I grew up, my husband and I was looking for stability. I wanted to find a headquarter company. It's not New York where there's so many companies. So I actually got a job in finance, working in banking. And I went years later after working to get my MBA, because I always felt like I needed the extra business. Even though I'd been working, I was successful. I felt like I needed the credibility. I wanted the degree. I wanted to grow and take some of those classes. So I did that. And then, of course, after 22 years, I left banking and started a completely new chapter in life.
I read that you had been in banking for over 20 years. And I was like, she looks too young to have been in banking for 20 some odd years. And now it's since 2019 that you've been coaching.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm like, where's the fountain of youth and where can I find it?
It's in meditation and yoga. So
okay, noted. I need to listen. I think it's really interesting that you went into this very male-dominated field. Yes. And you went and got your master's degree, which is very common in that field to take a few years after college and then go get your master's degree and come back. A lot of those companies really want to see that. What made you make the change? What made you decide that you wanted to inspire people and help entrepreneurs in a way that wouldn't necessarily seem like it came from somebody in a finance profession?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think I first got that idea actually during grad school. I remember we had amazing classes, which were some of them were the basics, the typical things you would take, finance and accounting and marketing and all of those classes. But we did have some really amazing emotional intelligence classes. One of my professors was Dr. Richard Boyatzis, and he helped write the EQ book, and with Daniel Goldman. We had a lot of classes there each year of my MBA program, really focused on the self and on you as a human and why are you here. And we even had to write a 20-page life visions paper, which was one of the hardest assignments to do. Yeah, and so when you go through and you reflect and you're taking the time outside of work, right? Because one of the things that school does is it allows you to pause what you're doing every day at work, and you suddenly your identity shifts a little bit. So you're not just the wife and the mom and the employee, but suddenly you're yourself again. So I was Aneta again after all these years as a student, and spending that time reflecting on what I wanted to do. I knew at that moment that I wasn't going to retire from banking. I wasn't ready and I didn't know what I was going to do next, but the seed was planted and I knew that it was going to be working with people, giving back somehow. It was definitely more service driven. So I think after I graduated, I was 40 when I graduated, and then I hired a coach at 46 when my kids were starting to get older, and I could suddenly think about myself and my future, thinking about them going off to college. And I said, you know what, now's a good time for me to figure out, what do I want to do? And so I call it a midlife awakening. That's what I call for all my clients. I'm like, unless you're doing something stupid, it's not a crisis. It's like an awakening. And so that's really when I took the time, spent 6 months with an amazing coach and figured out what I wanted to do, which included coaching. And I always loved yoga and meditation and wellness. And I wasn't sure how all of these things were going to integrate together, but I started exploring it while I was still at work. So I was still doing my job, doing everything for 2 years. And then finally, after 2 years, the timing was right to leave, take the leap of faith and start my own business. And I have not looked back since. It's just been amazing several years, even though COVID hit a little bit at an interesting time for many of us, of course, but also as a new entrepreneur, 1 year in, suddenly my strategy for year 2 in my business looked a little different.
I bet. Now, what you were really into meditation and yoga and all of this, the last 2 years of your career in finance, did it change your work or how you approached work in those last 2 years?
Yeah. So I've been a practitioner since the early 90s. I say I was doing yoga on VHS tapes a long time ago, but so I was a practitioner always. And it really, I think, was what allowed me to sort of survive the work schedule and school and being a mom and a wife and all these things. But I would say that once I decided that I was not going to retire from my job long term, I was still committed to doing an excellent job while I was there. It really just created this sense of freedom and space. And I started being more authentically myself. In banking, as and I'm sure people can imagine, it's pretty conservative. It's male dominated, surrounded by a lot of male energy.
Yeah.
I got rid of the chair in my office and started sitting on a yoga ball. I wouldn't turn on the overhead lights. I started diffusing oils and using Himalayan sea salt lamp. And I had a sign outside my door that said door closed, meditating. People would always want to meet in my office. They'd say, do you mind if we meet in your office instead of mine? It's just so relaxing here.
I bet.
And so it really was nice to start to really show, and people knew I was in yoga teacher training. I went to get certified during that time while I was still at the bank. So I think it allowed me to be more of myself and to bring more of my authentic self to work. And I do think it softened me in many ways because I wasn't trying to lead in a way that just didn't feel natural to me necessarily. And I think it allowed people to ask me questions about things that I was doing, meditation, like mindfulness, et cetera. So it did change me. It gave me permission, I think, to be more of myself.
I love that. So on your website and your book and everything else, your motto is start living the width of your life, not just the length. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's a question I ask all my podcast guests. So it comes from a Diane Ackerman quote, and that was actually her quote. It's a fragment of her quote. And I remember reading it the first time. And at the time when I read it, I wasn't living the length. I felt like I was it was Groundhog's Day all the time, over and over again. I was just in the survival mode, not necessarily thriving. And I think the length of it is the philosophy that we don't know how many days we have, how many linear days we have on this planet, but we do have control over what we do with every single day that we are given. And so it's, for me, living with gratitude, living intentionally, mindfully, being more present, slowing down, appreciating the people in your life, saying yes to more life opportunities, to more joy, appreciating abundance that's everywhere, whether it's the bird outside your window or a flower. It just really is, I think, a philosophy of just looking at every single day and then every moment as a gift and remembering that the next one is not promised to any of us. And so that's what it means to me to live the width of your life. And I think that inspires different choices that we make.
Absolutely. I love that. I think it's so important to live in the moment because you're right. Most of us have experienced loss, whether it's a loved one or a friend or somebody that's just an acquaintance and it's sudden and we're jarred by it. And we regret sometimes, oh gosh, I didn't call that person I wanted to or what have you. And I just think that it's so important to really embrace every moment that you have and be super be super focused on every detail around you and grateful for it. I know when I wake up, if I'm in a bad mood or if I've had a bad day, I try to be grateful for something and it just changes my whole attitude.
Yes.
So you're a coach now and a consultant, and you help high achieving professionals and entrepreneurs who want to live lives of purpose, passion, and peace. So I know that is hard for so many highly driven, successful people. What are you teaching them?
A lot of times it's about getting back to the basics. And so I always love to start off asking folks, usually if they're coming to me, they say something's not working. I got the title, I got the jobs, I have the promotions, I have the money, and I'm not fulfilled, or I'm doing all these things and I'm not healthy. Somehow I'm suffering, or my relationships aren't thriving. So there is definitely something that sparks somebody to reach out from a coaching perspective. So we usually work initially and identify, well, what are the top goals and concerns that you want to work on? And I always start high level and teach people to dream again and to say, don't worry about how you're going to do a lot of these things. What do you want? What does it look like for you to have more balance in your life, or more peace if they're looking for those things, or to be able to experience more joy every day? Because for every single person, for you, for me, for others, it's different. So it really is identifying with them, what are your values? What are the things that are important to you? And then how are you spending your time? Do your choices align with that? What does your schedule look like? Are you incorporating time to do those things, to take care of your self-care, to take care of your health? Are you making time for the people that you say are most important, friends, family, other people? Are you volunteering if that's something that's important? So it's really identifying those things that we all each innately know are important to us, but we somehow have lost our way usually. And then it's just starting slow, changing behavior. I think James Clear said 1% better every day in Atomic Habits equal, compound effect equals a brand new life in the course of a year. That's some of the things that we do. Every relationship that I have with my clients is so personal. I just feel coaching is so intimate in a way that you're sharing, and it's confidential and it's private, but you want every single person to feel successful. You want them to feel good. You want them to say, yes, I was able to do all these things, and to feel successful. And so it's amazing. Every program is a little bit different, catered to the people I work with. Some people choose to stay on longer. And I also incorporate, in addition to coaching, I do teach yoga and meditation every morning. So 6 days a week, every morning. And I will tell you and I incorporate breath work. I'm a certified breath work facilitator too. The clients that show up in the morning every day and they start their morning that way, or with the recording, if they can't do it, if they're in a different time zone, they see results faster and they have sustainable results because they're changing their daily behaviors and they're starting their day positive and focused, in community, breathing, slowing down, setting their intentions for the day. Just simple things that make such a huge difference. So I hope that answered, your question in terms of the approach.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. How has that work of you doing the breath work and the meditation and teaching it for other people changed your everyday?
Oh my gosh. Well, I just look forward to seeing my folks every morning. And these are people that I see and I talk to sometimes before anybody else, right? Because it's early. And so it does feel like family, and it's so amazing. But I also wake up even earlier before I teach, because I do my own practice. And so in order for me to serve, in order for me to get sort of spiritual downloads and guidance on what I should be teaching, I need to be in meditation. I need to be in breath work. I need to make sure that I'm taking care of myself and creating that quiet space. And so it's just another way to stay accountable to my own spiritual practices. And I think that that's been really helpful. And it does help to know that at 6:45, there's going to be a group of people waiting on Zoom to see me, and that I need to be prepared in order to be able to provide what they need that morning.
Yeah. And you're working with professionals, highly achieving professionals and entrepreneurs.
Yes. Yeah.
Are there a lot of similarities between them in the type of workforce they're in? Or is there a group that's very similar that comes to you? Or do you just have people from all over?
I have people from all over. I have people from all different industries, but the ways that we are all similar, because I'm still recovering from my own tendencies, right? So I would say high achieving. So these folks are achievers. They are people who tend to be very successful in everything they're doing. A lot of folks suffer from perfectionism because they're working so hard, right? maybe not establishing clear boundaries because they want to help everyone and be all things to all people, work real hard, place their own needs last. Some of these things that we all find ourselves in when we are that type A personality. And so people have either experienced burnout a lot of times, they're on the road to burnout, or they just know that they are not optimally healthy at the time.
Yeah.
But I have male clients, female clients, really of all industries. And it's interesting because at our core, we're not all that different.
Do you have any stories that you are at liberty to share where somebody's really been transformed?
I do have one of my earlier clients who I knew personally and wanted to work with me. This was someone who was very successful in their job, and then they lost their job. And so often that's really tied to people's identities, especially for men. That person and I started working together, and he just transformed. He was definitely, I think, very stressed, always working, burned out, not making good, healthy habits. And he has been on my meditation. I started the meditation group during COVID. So in March of 2020, he started working with me that summer, I believe, or maybe before even. And he's been on every single morning. He lost a lot of weight just because he started making better choices for himself. He started sleeping better. His relationship with his partner, his husband, actually changed significantly. So I would say his was such a transformation from start to finish. And he recognized that. And also his husband recognized the change in him. So I think that was one of the very early ones where I was like, wow, this is definitely very impactful, because we covered everything. And he was not someone who ever thought that he could meditate or do breath work. I still can't get him to do yoga, but I think one day we'll get him to do that. I also had someone that I worked with over 20 years ago in banking who reached out to me, and we did coaching together. But then he's on every morning for yoga, and he is a consultant in the financial industry, and probably not one person that I ever would have predicted that would really take to that. And so people surprise you. You just never know exactly what the change is going to be and what will make the biggest impact. But every single client has some sort of piece of story like that.
Yeah. So speaking of peace, what is the meaning of peace to you?
Peace for me, I think when I'm most at peace, I wake up and I just have a heart full of gratitude and expect and know that the day is going to be amazing and wonderful no matter what. And then I can go through the day feeling that, reminding myself of that peace, and going to bed just reflecting on the day again with gratitude, with a sense of just joy, reflecting back, remembering what the day is. Also peace too. Sometimes it doesn't mean that things are great or perfect. It just means that in the midst of storm, you can find your center and stay connected and stay grounded and not lose sight of what's important and what's meaningful, maintaining good emotional health, all of those things. And I think peace and joy are two things that are so important. And sometimes we don't necessarily place high priority on them because we can't always name them, or we just see glimmers of them. But when it does become a daily choice, I think or intention, it just changes everything.
Absolutely. Have you seen your own as well as your clients' meaning of success change after the work? Like what success means to them?
Yes. And that's actually one of the first exercises we do too. When you asked me in the coaching, we do an assessment that actually looks at 12 different areas of life. And we define how satisfied are you with all of these areas now. And it goes more in depth than people necessarily think about in their life. People might think career, maybe health, maybe relationships, but it really goes more in depth. And then I say, what would it look like to get to a 10? What does success look like in this area of your life? And then that helps become the base of their life vision of what they want their life to look like in really detailed as if it's already happened. And it does change everything, because they recognized, if they came to me and they sought me, they recognized that the old definition, society's definition, isn't working. And so for them, for some people, it means less money and, more time with family. For others, it means more freedom. And they want to start a business because they want more creative expression, or they want more freedom to travel, or geographic freedom. So I think that the pandemic has also opened people's eyes to what is possible and also what is important. And so those definitions definitely have changed over the last few years.
That's so interesting. And you give a complimentary consultation to anybody who's interested in coaching with you, and they can go to your website.
Actually, I have a few URLs, but even to make it easier, you could just do my name, AnetaKuzma.com. And that will take you directly to the homepage. And I have in the banner a free consultation, because many people, some might be familiar with coaching, some may not. And I want them to be able to experience it and to see if it's right for them, and to meet me and to understand whether our personalities align, whether our energies align and approach. I just find that is really helpful for people, and they don't feel like they're obligated to do anything afterwards. But it's a great way for me to meet people and share, and for them to also experience what coaching could look like.
Okay, great. So I think that's fabulous. We'll also put your website and your Instagram and your social media handles and the link to your book in the show notes so that everyone can find you. So what inspired you to write the book? It's a whole year of meditations.
It is. I always wanted to write a book. I love writing. I've been a journaler my whole life. So I guess I always consider myself a writer, but not a published writer, except for articles and those types of things. And when I turned 50 last year, I knew that's when I wanted to do something meaningful in that year. And so I launched my podcast and wrote the book. And when I thought about the book that I wanted to write, I remember someone saying, write the book that you would like to read. And what I find with my clients is that most of my clients, and many of us, we've read so many self-help books. We've read so many amazing books. We have bookshelves filled with them, but it's the application that is a challenge. We can consume it, but then we don't necessarily do all the things with it, and we pick up something else. And so my book, I wanted to be able to do bite-sized wisdom every single day that ended with a journal prompt or reflection, so that one takes action. There's a chapter for each month, and then there's, of course, daily entries. Each month has a different theme, on the theme of basically a year of transformation. And I call them meditations because they are reflections. You should spend some time reflecting on it and either journaling about it, or maybe spending the day going, I wonder what it does mean to say no to something today I don't want to say yes to, or what would it look like if I set a healthy boundary for myself, or maybe created a joy basket so that whenever I needed a little pick me up, I can go and pull from this thing. So there's just that. I hope it's inspiring and also practical for folks. And I'm working on a journal to go with it, because what I've heard from my clients and people have purchased it is, I want the journal that has the prompt, so I don't have to look it up and it's already there. So I'm like, okay, so we're working on that right now too.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
I'm excited to read it. I'm excited to do it. I was just doing something else that was a 21 day, just a short thing every morning. And I've never done something like that before, or stuck with something like that before. And you know what? It really changed my day. So I am definitely going to read your book. Book is called Live the Width of Your Life, 365 Daily Meditations of Living with Purpose, Passion, and Peace. Yes. So definitely pick up a copy of that book. So back to your work, what is the most challenging part and the most rewarding part?
The rewarding, of course, is just seeing the transformation and developing these relationships with my clients. Like I said, I really just care so deeply for all of them. And the challenge is probably taking some of my own advice and saying no. I tend to want to help everybody that wants to work with me. And of course, if everyone has a sense of urgency when they want to start something, nobody says, hey, I think I might want to do it. Let's start in 3 months. It's usually like, can we start soon? So I think for me, it's just really continuing to make smart decisions for the way I structure my business. With coaching, one of the challenges, of course, is that it's great that you're busy, you have wonderful clients, but also being able to make decisions on scale and structuring my week and my days in the way that makes sense for me, that gives me the balance that I need as well. Lesson for all of us always, right? You do what you're doing and it grows, the business grows, and then you have to constantly adjust a little bit or make tweaks. So I'm in year 4 right now. And so I'm thinking about next year already and what happens. So I think like any entrepreneur, that's probably the thing that most of us struggle with, is just finding ways to continue to do what you love. And I'll say too, since I started outsourcing things. I have a great virtual assistant. That's amazing. I have a bookkeeper. That's great. And so I've hired people from Fiverr and other sources to Upwork to really do projects. And so that's been fantastic. So, but also you learn along the way. So those are some of the growing pains of, I think, being an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Has the work that you're doing to help others changed you?
It really has. I think I continue to be really empathetic and compassionate. I do a lot of wellness consulting for companies. And so I am not just one-on-one coaching, but work with organizations and some global companies. So I'm working with folks kind of all around the world, which I love, on a larger scale, talking about wellness, providing awareness, but also tools and tips and practicing things. It really just gives me a good view into what's happening right now for just all of us in this world. And I think that there's so much compassion there because people, they're so accountable. They want to do the right things. They're trying to live their life in a way with integrity, with all of this, but it's hard. It's really hard. And so for me, I just always have to remind myself to give myself space and to not take too much of that energy on. That can be really hard because I am working so closely with people. So of course, energetically, sometimes that could make me feel a little depleted as well.
Yeah. And I can tell that you are empathic.
Yes.
And I think, first of all, I love that when you were in school, you had classes on emotional intelligence. I think everybody should have that.
Yes.
Because it's always sad for me, and I'm sure I could grow my own significantly, but I think it's sad for me when I see a grown-up who has so much potential and they're so intelligent book-wise, or they have book smarts or whatever, but they just they're not fulfilled because they don't have the EQ. And it's just so sad. And I love people who are successful, who are empathic, who also understand how important boundaries are.
Yes, it's so true. It's so true. And I think we know that, right? The most successful CEOs of organizations long-term are the ones that also have a high EQ. And listen, we all spend so much time in our thinking mind, and I think more and more people are recognizing the importance of dropping into the body, connecting with energy, with our emotions, and also just regulating their nervous system too, which does help with EQ. So I am encouraged by the conversations. I'm encouraged by the receptivity of organizations to talk about things that we never talked about even 5 years ago.
So you also have a podcast.
Yes.
Called Live the Width of Your Life, which I have been lucky enough to listen to. I think everybody should listen to it. Aneta has some amazing guests and some really inspiring conversations. So what inspired you to start a podcast?
First of all, I love listening to your podcast, Kelly, and you have wonderful guests. I always learn something different from all the entrepreneurs that you have on, I love listening to podcasts. I've been listening to podcasts for many years. I love discovering new ones. And so there's that has expanded. And also with my clients, I just recognize that every single person that is focused on themselves and growing and that has made a courageous decision or a choice or is inspiring. And we hear the stories so often of celebrities or people that are in the public eye, but we don't always. And then sometimes people could say, oh, well, they can do that because of this, this, and that. And so you almost shrug it away or you don't necessarily pay attention. But all my guests they're people, just everyday people, all of us, right, who either stepped out into faith, overcame some fears, acknowledged the things they were struggling with and decided to do something different, made a big change, changed up their life. And I just find those stories to be so inspiring. And so I'm happy that you like listening to the conversations, because I literally am so delighted in the conversations to learn about people. And it really is a conversation. And so, but one that you give permission for others to listen in on, which is a gift. And so you can't meet all the 8 billion people on this planet, but podcast sure does give you an opportunity to kind of hang out with some pretty cool people.
I agree. And just like you, I love listening to people's inspiring stories. And I think that a common theme of all of these successful people is that thing where people move away from fear before they move towards pleasure.
Yes.
These people, they stepped into their fear.
Yeah.
And they did something that they were scared of, and it changed their lives.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a story, Kelly, from your own life where you feel like you did that and it was maybe not as scary once you made the decision as it was leading up to it?
Totally. So this year, I decided that I need to do something that scares me almost every day.
Oh, I love that.
And it doesn't mean bungee jumping or something like that, although I probably would. But I am the type of person that if I'm throwing the party, or I'm at a party with a bunch of friends, or I'm at a networking event with guests, I can work the room. But if I go to a networking event by myself, even if I know the host or the hostess, I don't want to bother them. I feel awkward going up to people that I don't know by myself.
Yeah.
And I was at this networking event that I paid a lot of money to be part of this conference and be part of this group. And I was like, you know what, Kelly? Get over it. Just go up. Stop standing by the cheese table. You're going to get fat. Just go up to somebody and say hi. And if they don't want to talk to you, they'll make an excuse and you go to the next person. Who cares?
Yeah.
And I did that. And you know what? It changed my life. And I've started doing that more. And I do little things like that. It doesn't take a big thing necessarily. I want to do some big things that I'm scared of. But you know what? I just got over myself.
Yeah. I love that example because, first of all, I'm like you at the cheese table, kind of looking around. I'm definitely not the one that's like going to come in the middle and start up a conversation with a lot of people, but I do challenge myself in those moments as well. And it does start with small things, because when you start with the small and you build on it, you can start to get to the big things fairly quickly. If you focus just on the big, you might procrastinate, you may take too long, it might seem too complicated, you might not go all in. But I do think that if you start small with anything, so I love this idea of doing something that scares you often, you will get to those big goals. I do see it and I believe it.
Yeah. And you probably know better than I do, but procrastination is basically based on fear. It's not necessarily somebody's lazy, right?
No, it's a saboteur. It's a self-sabotaging behavior. We all have them. And for some people, procrastination is the one. And it is usually tied to fear. It's tied to overthinking something. It's tied to maybe reflecting on an anxious moment from the past and sort of reliving it. So definitely it's tied to some sort of a fear or uncomfortable situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
I thought I had heard that somewhere and I wanted to ask you. So definitely check out Aneta's podcast and her book. Now it's time for my Fearless 5. So you get 5 questions. I'm putting up 10 fingers, but it's really 5. 5 questions and you get 2 passes. And don't be afraid to say pass. We're all about boundaries. So, or if you just don't feel like answering the question, no problem.
Yeah.
This is a question that I tend to ask everybody first. It's something that I find the answer to from everybody to be a little bit different and very interesting. So here's number 1. What is something that you find most people value that you don't necessarily value or subscribe to, and why?
I think most of us, and I used to be this way, value our title or position in an organization, or maybe even salary, we tie it to our identity, and we tie it then to our own sense of purpose and value. And I don't feel that way anymore. I don't see it. I think really I think we're supposed to shed all those things. It's great to keep them. It's great to have them. Once you shed them and you actually get down to the heart of who you are, your spirit, who you are, what you're here to do, then I think that's beautiful. And I think that that's really what I value. And I try to do constantly for myself. And I see it in my clients. And I love that so much.
I love that answer.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What is the most desirable trait that you feel another person can possess?
I would say I love people who are good listeners. I think that it's not always a skill that many people have, is active listening. And I'm sure you've experienced this, but when I'm in the presence of someone who is listening and is so present in the moment with me, instead of thinking through what they want to say, or you could see that they're thinking about their grocery list or something, you just feel so valued, and you feel like that conversation is important, and you feel as a person that, wow, this is a wonderful soul connection that we have. So I think active listening is really important. It's one of the first things I noticed about my husband when we first met. And I thought, wow, I haven't experienced this a lot in other relationships. And so that's always stood out to me as a wonderful trait.
I think I agree with you. I think that's a really important trait. Sometimes I'll be talking to somebody and it's like what you said, like they're probably thinking about what they have to buy at the grocery store, because you just see their eyes glaze over, and I'm like, have I really been talking for that long?
Yes.
Am I boring? But it's true, because it makes you feel like you're not important.
Yeah.
So active listening is really important. And I like that a lot. What is one important lesson that life has taught you in the past year?
I think the one that I keep learning over life, throughout my life, and especially, is release control, let go and allow, come back to the basics of when you're stressed and when there's so much work to do, that's when you meditate longer. That's when you need to take care of yourself more. That's when you need to sleep more. And it's almost like slow down in order to reset and readjust. Even though I teach this and I do it for a living, I am human and I'm wired. There's a reason why the people gravitate to me that are very similar to the way I was and the things I work on, is we just do, right? And so that's a lesson I constantly am reminded of. And I'm much better at picking up on it faster, recognizing it and shifting and adjusting. And so I would say that's probably a lesson that keeps coming up.
But you know what? You're so aware of it. And that's the most important part.
Yeah.
If you had the chance to go back in time and change one thing, would you?
No, I think I guess I believe, and this is just me, I believe that every decision we make opens a door, and from there, more and more doors open. And I think we've all seen the movies where someone tries to go back in time and change one thing and then creates a bigger mess of spaghetti. And I do believe that we're here on a journey. We are here to learn lessons. We are not here to live a life that is perfect, that is without pain, that is without any adversity. I don't think we're supposed to sort of protect ourselves from that. I think that those things are bound to happen. And they're the things that give us the grit and the resilience and the character building. And I think we become better. Not that we want to seek opportunities that are hurtful, but I do think that we learn from them. So no, I don't think I would change anything. I think it would I can't see it turning out well.
I'm so happy you said that, because I think it's important not to live life with regret.
I agree with you. Yeah, it's so sad. I don't know if you've ever read the book or seen anything about the 5 Regrets of the Dying.
No.
It's a book that, and I can't remember the author, but she was a hospice nurse, and she wrote a book about the 5 sort of major things that people regret on their deathbed. And it's all the basic things. It's not like anyone said, oh, I wish I went for that promotion, or I wish I made more money. It really wasn't. It's all the basic things, like spending time with family and telling people you love them and care for them. And so I'm with you. I think that if we do it right, then we don't necessarily have any regrets.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. And number 5, this is a fun one. if you knew you would be stranded on an island and you could bring 3 things and that's it, what would they be?
So I love to read. And if I'm going to be there, I would want a Kindle with unlimited books on it, if that were even possible, or just a library of books. I don't know if we could do that, but I think definitely that to keep me entertained. I would probably want my loved ones if we could bring people. So maybe my loved ones. And then I think I would want a journal. I would probably have a lot to do. All the other stuff, you can meditate, you don't need anything. Do yoga, you don't need anything. Hopefully there's some food that is available there. But probably, a journal, unlimited books, and my loved ones.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. So before we end, I want to know if there's anything at all that's crossed your mind today that you might want to share with the audience.
I've just enjoyed our conversation, Kelly. And I just think that this is just one of those examples too, where it's like, we don't live in the same city. We don't maybe have one connection in common, I think, together. And it's so beautiful and amazing that we're able to have these conversations. So I love that. And I want to thank you. So that came across my mind. And just for anybody who's thinking about coaching or maybe learning a little bit more about meditation or breath work, really no obligation, reach out to me. I'm happy to meet people, to talk to people, to share resources, to point them in a different direction if it's not through me. But we can change any given moment. We could say, you know what, if what I'm doing doesn't work, we can make a change and things can get better. So
I love that. Thank you so much. You are such a joy to have on the show. Can't wait for people to be inspired by you. And I can't wait to read your book and start my 365 days of meditation. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Kelly. It was such a joy to be on here. It was so wonderful to meet you. Thank you.
You too.
Thank you for watching and listening to Kelly Minds Her Manners. Make sure to subscribe to the show and don't forget to leave us a review to tell us what you liked about the episode. You can connect with Kelly at Kelly Minds Her Manners on Instagram and TikTok or on our website, www.kellymindshermanners.com.